It's going slow this morning.
I have a very temperamental internet, let's say.
It's unusual. We fibre here. It's very unusual. Okay, here we go.
It's amazing we can do it at all, though, isn't it? It's
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to an early start on Easter Monday morning. Just been having a very interesting chat with Cathy before we came online about the world and the state of affairs and how this whole coronavirus thing has really thrown up very interesting questions that will have to be answered, I suspect, as time goes by. So, before we go any further, I'd like Cathy, the floor is yours to introduce yourself to the world and tell us who you are, what you're about, and what magic you're bringing into the world. Because your bio that you sent me yesterday was a bit of a fake. It only barely scratched the surface of the amazing career that you've had and the contribution that you're making to the world. So tell us more about it.
Well, I'm all embarrassed now. Well, do you know, honestly, like I almost don't care about any of that stuff. Sometimes I do because, I feel like it brings a different perspective on things now. I used to be an economist. I worked in international development for a very long time, and that's kind of my, it's my passion. Things tend to lead me in that direction. And I worked in government, UK government for a while, quite a long while. I was actually, I don't really bring it up so much now, but for a very long time I was involved in European relations and European programs, European affairs. So the whole Brexit scenario, which maybe we better kind of leave that one on the back burner, who knows? But, I have a lot of opinions about things, but also I mean, I do genuinely have a lot of opinions about things, but also what's really interesting about being in this conversation, the kind of the three principles understanding of things is that we can be in those conversations and also we can step back from them. And you and I were just talking before we came live about, you were scrolling down some of the extreme comments in, your news pieces in Ireland, and that's the fun of it. Actually, I was having a discussion on Saturday with I've got my youngest son's at university, and he's got to put in his dissertation proposal. He's actually late with it. It should have been in a week ago. So on the one hand, there's a bit of time pressure. And then he said, it's not really time pressure, Mum, because we don't actually have to do anything until September. So he was, there's a deadline, and then how seriously is he taking the deadline? And then we were talking about ideas, and he's a history student. I think I stopped studying history when I was about 12 at school. So I it's a subject I don't really even know what it is. And so I'm talking about my ideas, and he's coming up with his ideas. And at one point he said to me, he said, Mom, he said, I feel like you're so attached to your ideas that I can't hear my own ideas. And then we laughed basically about it, because it felt to me like I was very enthusiastic about my ideas, but actually I wasn't attached to them. I was just really excited, and I was leaping from one thing to another thing because I was excited just in the moment. But it was so interesting how smart he was to kind of pull, he wasn't trying to argue about his idea was better than my idea, but pulling me out of the discussion that we were having about the ideas and saying the kind of actually what's going on here, Mum. And then we just laughed about the whole thing. And I said, what you said is completely true. I'm taking up too much space with my ideas, and you're right to point that out. Like, what's going on for you? and it sounds like a kind of simple teenage conversation, but his ability to do that, and relating to Corona or our discussions on Brexit or anything, the ability that we have ideas and we have opinions, and yet there's this space somehow where we exist beyond our ideas. And if we can step into that and come in and out of those, the enthusiasm or the anger, and then back into the okay, what's here for us before the ideas. I just think that's a really beautiful existence.
Isn't it funny how you have just been the living example of that right now? You know, as we were starting the chatting, and just the moment that we remember that, the moment, just I always am just so taken by the fact that the moment we see through our own opinions and our own facts and things that are, well, which are opinions mostly, or beliefs, that, like you say, we drop back into that space really quickly.
Yeah.
It doesn't require anything. Would you speak to that, you know, in the area, you know, part of your dynamic down through the years has been working with leaders, working with social groups, charities, etc. And to say that part of that plays in, we'll say, helping them make decisions, and lots of times incredibly important decisions that have ramifications for lots of people, you know.
Yeah. Gosh, what to say? It's I mean, like with my son, it's a space that we know it's there, and yet one of the things I see repeatedly is the desire to do something, you know, good, to really make a difference in the world, and to become very attached to what that looks like. So I have one guy at the moment who works for he's in the water sector, actually. He works for a large international NGO, and he feels like he's dedicated his life to the mission of the work that he does and the shape of the work within this organization. And sometimes that can be really stressful for him. Are we delivering this? You know, what more can I do? And I kind of poke fun sometimes and say, you know, do you think you're going to go around and put taps in the houses of the 8 billion people in the world? Like, what does that contribution actually mean? And in all seriousness, you know, lots of us are like that, like me too. You know, I believe passionately in things. I've done a lot of things around, most of my sort of earlier career, I worked on a lot of poverty alleviation type programs of one sort or another, employment policy, women's policies, you know, we're in European, kind of a lot of the point of the European Union, apart from the political, is to spread some of the wealth to the poorer regions, you know, as you'll know very well in Ireland. And the kind of the imperative of that is like, it's better to be this, you know, to have access to water, to have a less unequal share of wealth. And so it's very easy to become attached to those ideas as being like right. And one of the things that I noticed that I've come around to is not so much to justify like why those things are right, why we should be doing them. But I think when we step out of the kind of the obsession with our own opinions and directions, and we look at that question like, what's it all for? And so these are, you know, sometimes I have these very sort of high level, almost philosophical conversations with the individuals that I'm working with. Sometimes we're in the detail of it, but sometimes it's helpful to say, well, what is this all for? Why do you think we should all have, you know, taps and water and toilets or whatever? You know, why should we have a more equal income distribution? It always comes back to that, like that space that we just were in at the beginning of this live video, that it comes back to, just because there's something in the feeling of it that we are making people's lives better. And so for me, that making people's lives better is not about, you know, the size of the house and the number of toilets and the you know, the money in the bank account. But when you are able to experience that we're doing this out of a sense of connection, a sense of getting back to what I think a lot of people are experiencing now, the community, the speaking to the neighbours, when we're in that space which exists, then for me the question turns around and it becomes a why not question. Well, in that space, why wouldn't I give my last toilet roll to my neighbour? Why wouldn't I want to do something which seems so obvious, that in a world where we've got the global resources that we've got, why would we want to hoard money as an individual or a corporation. Why wouldn't we have a way of helping people live so that we can all live to a kind of minimum physical standard? So it's so you know, these sound like very conceptual philosophical questions, but actually I think when we step out of our attachment to the idea and look at things in a kind of what's this all for anyway, we can really feel that space. And I'm having so many conversations at the moment where people can really experience, gosh, there's this sense of peacefulness, even though there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of, you know, questions and terrible health experiences, you know, whatever, worries about jobs and income. But actually, even with all of this, there's something which is there. And so from that kind of space of there being something really beautiful, why wouldn't we say hello to our neighbours, and why wouldn't we do the things that make sense to do?
You know, I know, like we say, the focus, we'll say, of a lot of your work is industry based, etc. Of different types of industry. You know, I'm just using the word broadly, but it's a principle we're talking about, the why not principle. It isn't just about the distribution of corporate wealth and the influence of that for improvement, but why not in our own lives? You said, why not share the last time toilet roll? Why the last year toilet roll? Why not?
Yeah.
You know, it is that principle that we're talking about, that just because we'll say that there is a bigger game that you're playing here in the sense of the amount of people that you're dealing with, but it's still on the individual level, the principle remains exactly the same.
Exact same, and we've all experienced it. I bet everybody. I don't know if it's just me and you or anybody's listening or anybody will listen after, but everybody has had that experience of I was on a call for a group last week, and one of the guys said, gosh, I realized that I'm actually talking to my neighbours for the first time I always talk to my neighbours, but you know, just that,
talking to my neighbours,
talking to my, like looking at them in the face and seeing them, or the person in one of my friends in San Francisco was saying they've got, you know, the queuing thing at the supermarket, and he's been going, and he said it's actually really nice, although bizarre, to stand in this queue, you know, 2 meters away from the person in front of you, but actually talk to them.
I had an amazing conversation with a wonderful woman in the UK before the weekend, and one of the things that she told me about the what's going on their street is the fact that they had a kind of like a neighborhood watch type thing where they, you know, like a group email and stuff like that. Okay, and it was fine, and if there was something they needed, they just put it up and they'd say it, and it was about, you know, and it generally kind of kept the street together, and they could do things together on the street to help maintain it or whatever. But she said it was just really just a there.
Sort of thing.
It was just there, you know. And she said it has absolutely burst into life. And she said that how they've suddenly realized to each other that I have something that you need, and you have something that I need, and if I have something that I don't need, you know, and I'm looking to set something out the back here, you know, for vegetables or whatever. Oh, I have so much pruned, you know, and in boxes. Would you like them? And this is going on. And she said that is just the whole street has exploded into giving stuff to each other and helping each other. And she said it's become such an experience. And she says we get being socially isolated, we get having to protect ourselves and our family, you know, but it's also about protecting our neighbours. But that doesn't mean that we can't help each other. And she said the whole street has exploded into this level of activity and swapping stuff for each other and moving stuff. And everybody has found something to do or to give or to contribute or to receive or what, which is equally as important as giving, is the ability to receive it back.
Asking, you know? For something and asking
for it. You know. And she said it's been quite extraordinary. And she said for years, she said it's just been there. And since it's that, and it just, when you were talking about it, that's what struck me. That whole thing has just burst into life, and I see it here in the locality, you know, with the with the different initiatives and the online local talent where we're drawing out all kinds of talent. And that's what it's about.
There's something about the energy of it, isn't it? I noticed that as well. I noticed kind of just after we went into lockdown, which is, I guess it's coming up, I think we're in our 3rd week or 4th week, I can't even remember, but just immediately after, there was a kind of a little mini explosion, I noticed anyway, in the things that I follow online on my Instagram of, because obviously all the gyms had closed, of people doing, and here I am in my hoping to do some workout this morning, but of people offering like free workouts and, you know, let's all just kind of get together on a Zoom call. I have no idea how it's going to work, but I've got my, you know, weights and it was, what was really fun about it is that it wasn't done with any kind of strategic or tactical, let's do this because this is the way to market your business. It was just a kind of an uprising of that positive energy. And it felt different, although the form of it, like you said, this person had the email list, it was all there before, but the form of it was exactly the same. But there's something about that, the energy that brings it to life, and so I think that's what is really interesting to notice. I mean, we'll see it all of the time, but I think for a lot of people, maybe it's shining more of a light on that. If that is the spirit of how we can live together, work together, do business together, if we can bring the spirit back to what is it about how we're doing things, and focusing on the connection and the now and what's present for us right now, and not like what's going to be fantastic when we make this £3 million, euro, dollar profit, you know, not obsessing so much about getting anywhere, then it seems to me that, you know, the form, the structure, the business, the community will take the shape that it takes, but noticing when we're kind of on the, you know, noticing the energy, noticing the thing that's bubbling up and using that to guide us is so, I just think it's something worth pointing out to people now at this time when we're all seeing so many examples of it.
Oh, this is a slightly more difficult question in the sense of it's a struggle for an answer by an awful lot of people. But could you speak to that whole energy, that spirit, because it alludes to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, about because what's behind it?
Oh, Billy, I have no idea.
I know it's a landmine question for sure.
And everybody has a lot of opinions about it. What I know is that
what does Cathy know?
I tell you what I know, and this is like what I know, but in a big proviso around that is what I know, and I know this to be true, absolutely 100% believe it, is that I know that we all know what it feels like. It's not something I have to teach somebody, or I have to, you know, get them to. It's something that we all know what it feels like, and I sometimes wonder if our language is inadequate to describe it. And so for me, for my words, like I will say, it's the thing that makes us alive. That's how I look at it. And my husband's very sort of sciencey based, and so he says, oh, you know, you're kind of going off on your crazy wazy stuff, and then I say, well, what is it that you think makes us conscious? And, you know, he talks about AI and all of these things, and then he said to me a classic line one day. He said, well, I don't think the toaster has consciousness. So, you know, it's like, where do you draw the line on machines, and what is the thing that makes us alive? And he said, well, it's electricity, but I mean, it's not obviously literally electricity, because then the toaster would have consciousness.
It's just part of the combination.
So, you know, we were talking about, like, we both see, him in his way sees that clearly a machine is not alive, and the dog is, you know? and it's that. And so I don't have any better words for it. People will, I know, talk about spirits and God and those kind of, you know, energy related words. For me, it's the thing that makes us alive. And so it seems to me that it's kind of like air, but it's not air.
You know, you said something earlier on that reminds me, it just popped in the subject of context. In the subject of context, the need to be right is entirely different to what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And I'll give you another tiny example of that. I was out just, walking our neighbourhood streets with my husband yesterday, and he's got an unpaid invoice he's got a whole series of invoices actually on organisations not paying him at the moment. And no doubt he's not alone, but he's finding himself very put out by they're arguing about some of the minor detail on one of these invoices. And of course he's relating all of this to me, like trying to get it off his chest. And it's I hear that he obviously feels he's in the right here and this person's in the wrong. And so we had a conversation about how useful it was to engage in that discussion, or whether it was more productive for him just to get it off his chest. I'm happy to listen and not participate in his rightness or wrongness, and then actually just not even talk to this person about it, but maybe focus on the other invoices where there's less controversy around the detail. But just and I can see my husband, he's a very gentle person. He's not somebody who always feels like he needs to be in the right. He's not at all argumentative, but I could feel him being pulled into, because he knew so firmly that he was right about this in his head. and that, and holding tight to it, and that was blinding him to how destructive that can be as a way of communicating and connecting, and moving out of the bigger picture, which is that do we like to have these invoices paid in some form or other, and just biting his tongue. And so and it's helpful for us all to see that. I find myself doing it with the kids sometimes. Probably the area that I do it more than anywhere is I can feel when I'm getting an attachment to, I want this to happen because in my head it looks like it's in the best interests and I know better, and I know that feeling in myself. And so I can, okay, Cathy, you need to take a breath here. and it's so, what's the word? Like it's so tempting, isn't it? It's to just go down that road of I'm right and you're wrong, and because that's how it looks and feels, that we're right about something. And so I guess bringing it back around to the bigger picture of why we do some of these things that we do is even when it looks like you are absolutely right, and the world will come to, some of the debates I see about the COVID thing, we should have the lockdown, we shouldn't have the lockdown, even when you feel like the world is going to go to rack and ruin if you don't do what I think we should do.
Yeah.
It's worth noticing the strength of your attachment to that feeling. And not that, one idea is, ideas have consequences, behaviors have consequences. Like, totally, I'm not denying that some things may play out in a certain way, which more people die down one road than down another road. Like, of course, that's true. But the strength of our attachment to something can really hamper the ability to, this energy that we were talking about, the way of working in a way that actually allows ideas and allows people to really show their potential. That this attachment can it's kind of, it's just suppressing any positive, creative, healing energy.
You hit the nail on the head. There about the conversations with your kids and stuff, and it's back to the why not. Some things are a principle in that sense. That it's the same up or down the size of it. Yeah. And when you look at the area of parenting, and hands up that anybody that is a parent that has got kids, we fall into this trap all the time, where we're 110% sure we're correct. I mean, there isn't a parent that's watching this that hasn't had those moments and kind of at some stage kind of went, oh, fuck. Maybe I should just back off here a small bit. That moment, that moment that we're alluding to. That moment when you realize that, well, wait a second, I am more now attached to the idea of what my children should do right now, because it appears to be the right thing to do, and I am so unbelievably attached to it. And even if you're not aware of it in the moment, it does show up at some stage. And that's the thing we're talking about, is that moment of clarity. Yeah. And the more in tune we are to recognizing, as you say, the feeling of it, that this doesn't feel right, much and all as we think it's right.
Yeah.
But something is off about it. Sometimes it's worth trusting the off feeling there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even, and I think even, you know, even when we really feel like if my child or if the world doesn't do X, Y, Z, these terrible things are going to happen, like just trusting that things are going to work out the way they work out. And especially with kids, you know, they're going to be fine. It doesn't matter which university they go
We
to.
turned
It
up
doesn't
here.
matter if they're like, no, look at us all. We're all, like, we got here with, somebody shared with me, I think it was a Facebook friend, was talking about, we were talking about education systems and how important it is, you know, that parents do, blah, blah, blah. And like, I thought about my parents, and they were relatively uneducated, kind of working class people, and they valued education completely, but they didn't have a lot of it themselves. And, you know, kids find their own way, regardless of their parents and regardless of what's going on. And it's incredible the, you know, sometimes I see it's like a kind of a buoyancy that we've all got, that we sometimes get lost, of course, and we sometimes get knocked back and repeatedly knocked back. But if we just take a bit of space, and if we allow our kids, you know, and everybody around us a bit of space, it's amazing. Then that, you know, again, this kind of this positivity, this energy that we're talking about, this life, for me, it's just like a life force. It's the thing that's going to come up, and the path takes us where it takes us. You know, our kids do whatever they do. And
Well,
I've got my teenager at home. This is so interesting. I see lots of my friends, they go, you know, we've got to give the kids some structure. I feel like I just let him run feral, and he's 19, so it's not like you know, I might feel different if he was 7 or 8 or 12 or, but what's interesting over the, you know, three or so weeks that we've been here, and he's basically been in his room, is that he spend a couple of weeks in his room, and then he gets to a point where actually he wants to go out every day, and then he suddenly decides he's going to tidy his room. And then I went into his room the other day, and he was working on an essay for a university, and to me that's like, all our kids would do that. Just because they're not following your timetable doesn't mean they're not going to engage in intellectually interesting, socially productive work at some point. We don't have to. They will find that road
yeah, well,
in their
you
own
know,
time.
it's funny you're saying that. Yeah, well, you know, I see it with 3 teenagers in the house at the moment with the different lifestyles. All 5 of us are living with my wife working as a nurse, etc. How allowing that space is very important right now for all of us
Yeah,
to do our own things like this, etc. But then come together as a family, because it's important, right, to recognize that they are their own people with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their understandings, the way they live
yeah,
their life, and how they move forward. And when you put 5 adults back together inside the house in an enclosed environment, even if they're your kids, you got to respect them as adults now,
yeah,
and not just children, and
yeah,
allow them their right to do it. But it was something that you said there when you were saying it there a while ago, Cathy, and it brought me back to one of your clients that says working for a multinational water company, and the attachment he has to the ideal that he has, and he's afraid. I got the sense that when you were saying it like that, he wasn't doing enough, or it wasn't the right thing, or whatever, you know. And I was thinking to myself, at the end of the day, there is no difference between what he's doing and what parents are doing.
yes,
The best we
completely.
can do is create the environment,
Yes,
do what we can within that environment,
yeah,
and trust the rest of the work will make itself happen.
yeah, 100%.
You know,
100%.
and I could say it doesn't matter how we work this up or work this down, whether it's large organizations or simply at
Or
home,
kids in the
it's
next room.
it still remains the principle.
It's the same, isn't it? It's absolutely the same. It's that,
It still remains the same, that when we're working from that sense of okayness, of when we recognize we can make a contribution, but where it's coming from is right, that we're trusting ourselves. By extension, um, it's the extension outwards to trusting people that they get it too,
yeah,
and allowing them to run with it, you know.
yeah. Everybody knows what we're talking about. They just might experience it in different ways or with different language around it. And
Yeah.
it's trusting that that feeling will guide you, and
Yes.
not feeling, and I'm, you know, the analyst, the intellectual. I spent a lot of life kind of figuring things out from my brain, and so I know exactly what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
You know, your brain's fantastic, but if you want a good life, then just have to put it down for a rest sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying that, and it's been the source of my morning. I woke up early this morning, and I was awake at about 6:30, and I'm conscious that people are sleeping a little bit later in the house. So if I go for my walk or whatever, when I come back, and it's an hour, everybody's still in bed, but the shower rattles through the house, and So I said, no, I'll put it off, and I'll go after and finish with you. The lads will be getting up, and so I started scrolling down through things, and there was a message sent to me about following this guy and whatever. So I did, and he is a really American coach, and he's a really well-known guy. And he has made some fantastic contributions, but this whole this I don't know where this alpha maleness came from him, but I could see it, and as I started to watch it and go through his stuff and down through it, it just got, you know what I mean, and I felt something off within myself. And I said, oh, this is me now looking for more answers. This is me looking for more, I could feel my brain revving up at 6:45 this morning. So instead, at 6:45 this morning, I listened to Andrea Bocelli. I listened to him coming live, he did.
He did the thing last night, didn't he?
He did. And, and on Saturday, I had this marvelous conversation with Sundance Robson, who's a First Nation Canadian, and we spoke about sweat lodges and in part of the permanence of that culture, how it helped to, in that sense, tap into the spirit, and then having the conversation about Christianity and the rebirth of Christianity. And so I was listening to Andrea Bocelli this morning, singing from Mann, and after that I went into, I don't know if you're aware of the Indian mystic Sadhguru.
Yes,
The Isha Foundation. I absolutely love this man. I've been to London to see him. But what I love about him is that, yes, he's a mystic and he's a guru, but he's also so unbelievably pragmatic and clear and keeps it very, very real. But there is a 20-minute broadcast every day in the morning and in the afternoon from his ashram, from the Dailinga, where in celebration of Dailinga, where there is just singing and music for 20 minutes twice a day. So I was sitting there afterwards and I was reflecting on the journey of the spirit over the weekend from First Nation Indian in Canada via Irish Christianity and Easter through Andrea Bocelli and out to India.
What I hear though is your wisdom. I mean, that's not your Billy's wisdom, but what I hear is you this morning coming back and finding yourself kind of going down this road, or I'm not sure I want to listen to this alpha guy. Like you sensed that, and so you said, okay, bye alpha guy. I'm going to do these other things. And so that and so what exists in that, the richness of that other world that you've just described, and when you step back, or you kind of, you go on the shelf or whatever it is that we describe it, is the richness of that life, that experience that is just there for living. And
across everything.
That's it for me. That's it. And then, and I know and trust from that this kind of creative, productive activity, whatever is going to come out of it. And here, we're in conversation, you've been in conversation with these other people, and it's so obvious that that's just a more fun and interesting and peaceful and happier and exciting.
But it doesn't change. This is the point about it, Cathy. One of the things that I really became aware of was that that it's given me the freedom to explore, looking in the truth of everything that's there in front of us.
Beyond the dogma.
Beyond the dogma. But it still doesn't change how I'm going to show up in the world, in the sense it doesn't hamper productivity. As a matter of fact, it helps, because now I'm moving in a direction that makes that deeper sense. That deeper sense, and I'm not, like you say, we're not attached to being right. But wait a second, what's the truth in it that I hear? you know, and I was just reflecting it afterwards on the spiritual arc of the weekend.
And it's all pointing to the same thing, isn't it?
All
Whatever the wrapping of Christianity and the ashram and when you peel away anything that has to do with, you have to do it this way, and I'm right as the, great God in the sky, whatever it is, that when you peel all of that stuff away, it's trying to describe or trying to share or trying to live from a place that exactly what we're talking about, that sense of there's this thing called a life force and we don't really quite understand it because we're part of it, and so how can we understand it, and yet we know it's there. So
I think as we're getting, because I'm conscious of the time, I'm looking at wrapping it up, but it's about becoming aware of it, regardless of whatever form it takes, and it doesn't matter. The awareness of the form is fine. There's enough. The truth is in it. That's fine. And then back to living our life. And I think that is such a marvelous discovery for me, and how rewarding it has been for anybody like you and I that have fallen into these things, that it's made our life easier in so many different ways. Doesn't mean any less productive, or or we're sitting around eating magic mushrooms and tripping out of it or anything.
Not at all. Another one of my clients, and just a kind of final comment on it, is another one of my clients had a conversation last week, and he said, "Oh my God, Cathy," said, "I feel like all of these things we've talked about over the months is preparing me for stepping up now in this time when I've got this organization, nobody knows what they're doing. We've got to respond rapidly. Nobody could have predicted it." He said, "Actually, I really now understand the importance, the implications of the kind of seeing how things work versus obsessing the detail of the one little widget of the machine, and then therefore being able to." It's like knowing how to cook, watching these MasterChef programs. If you know broadly food's food and what the different pieces do, then you'll make something, whatever the ingredients. And it's kind of that, like we're talking about principles of living and working, and that allow us to really engage with whatever the kids or the COVID, whatever is in the world in front of us. We're talking about more engagement, not less.
Yeah, totally. Cathy, and on that final note about it being about more engagement, about connection, my favorite word. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for a beautiful conversation, as we started at the high point and finished at the low point, the lovely point of it all. Thank you so much. If people wanted to reach out to Cathy, where would they find you?
Well, I think most people will see this on Facebook, so they can just contact me on Facebook. I'm pretty I have got a website. There's stuff over there to go and read and look, but most people, I guess, will be mutual connections of some sort, so please feel free to send me a friend request, drop me a message.
Everybody, Cathy, hold tough for me. I'm going to be, and I'll talk to you on the other side. Before we go, thank you all for joining us early on an Easter Monday morning. For those of you that are hopefully picking it up later on, thank you for your time, and I appreciate you sharing that time with us. Tomorrow is a slightly later time of 7 p.m. because we have Rudy and Jules from Hawaii. Rudy Kennard and his wife Jules, and they're such beautiful people. They are the epitome of love and sweethearts. But it's at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening because we're getting them from the other side of the world and trying to line times up. So our live tomorrow is going to be at 7 p.m. On one that I'm sure everybody that's watching this will love. They're gorgeous people. Thank you all so much for joining us. Cathy, thank you so much for joining me.
I just love that you're doing this, Billy. I just want to say thank you from not just me, but
I love it. I
can see it.
I so love doing this. I love meeting you and all the people I've met so far, and so much more to come. So I get up and think, what's today going to turn up? And it's a wonderful thing. And thank you, Cathy, and thank you for the contribution, and everybody, of course. Geez, that's helping me make this happen, because I've had people give me some levers to move this along. Anyway, thank you, Cathy. Will you wait for me while I turn this off? To everybody, I'll talk to you tomorrow evening. Thank you all so much.